Okay, Erev Tov. Let's start today's here in Hilchot Shabbat. This is a very one of the older halachot that we're learning in Hilchot Shabbat. They're practical, and it's important to know and the applications of them. Today we're dealing with again food. Okay, these malachot that how they relate to preparing food on Shabbat. So we're on page 173 in volume 19 of the Tzurba Rabbanon. We're in Shir Dalin, Hilchot Hachanos Oichel B'Shabbos, in the preparation of food for Shabbat. So last week we saw salting, and we saw a lot of interesting halachas when it comes to salting on Shabbat. And this week we're going to go into what we call tzoveyam, or what we call coloring food on Shabbat. Okay, so first of all, remember all the malachot that we're talking about were done in the Mikdash. So where was the malacha of tzoveyah done in the Mikdash? No?
Yeah.
What does Yeriot explain it to us? The curtains, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you say it was? How was the malacha of tzoveyah done?
With dying.
Okay, so that's just two understandings. So one of them is dying, which means you took
vegetables, fruit,
you chopped them up, you made a dye, and then you put the curtain in there, and you made it a color. Now there's a Gemara in Yerushalmi that says that the way they made the color is that they took the bodies of the animals and they were going to use the skin from to make the curtains, and they hit it and they bruised it until it became red, the skin, and it became the right shade of red. Then they I'm not sure. The bodies of the animals, that must be the dead bodies of the animals, were hit with reeds and bruised in order to cause the skin to redden to the hue needed for use in the Mishkan. But according to most Rishonim, the wool was simply soaked in a dye solution in order to color it. Okay, that is the malacha of tzoveyah. Because of what the Yerushalmi says, there's actually there's a halacha that's brought down that right can a woman,
this is indirect. If you're saying about hitting the animal, the skin, this indirect tzoveyah. Indirect, not really direct tzoveyah. When you really take something and you dye it, then you dye it. But over here, you hit the animal, so
right.
You don't think so? It's indirect.
Okay. I saw in Rabbi Ribbiat, he brought down interesting. He said that let's say a woman wants to make herself a little bit, her skin to look a little bit redder, a little more blush, but she doesn't have blush, or can she like on Shabbat, like hurt her skin in order to make it red, right? And he would say no, that's part of that's the way the Yerushalmi understood tzoveyah, which was they took the skin and they made it red. Okay, okay. But let us now get into the Tzurba and the first source on source 31. The question now is, what about food? Tzoveyah by food. We saw tzoveyah by curtains. We saw. What about tzoveyah by food? Can you color food? So says the Shibur Haleket.
No, you could color, no problem.
He says what? Okay, there is no coloring when it comes to food. All right. We had like we say there's ein toichin by certain cases, and we say in bishul acher bishul. These are principles that are found in the Talmud. There is no in the Gemara. It never says the ein derech tzviya ba'ochlin. There is no coloring by ochlin.
Because it doesn't stand.
But the Shibur Haleket says that it looks like there's not.
No, but it doesn't stand. If you color a baguette, it stands. But food, you're either gonna eat it or it's gonna be rotten. So
okay. The Darchei Moshe. So this is the Ramah. His commentary on the Torah, and he says in source 32, Shemati mi Abba. I heard from my father that his Rebbe heard from his Rav Rav Mimintz, the Aser litain yain edom litoch yain lavon b'shavas mishum tzovea. Okay, so according to Rav Mimintz, you can't put red wine into white wine because you're making the white wine now pinkish. So you're coloring the wine, right? Avolfi the Bal Yiraim, according to what the Yiraim says, which Shabbat Halakha mentions there, he brings the Bal Yiraim, the Ain Tzviya Ba'ichin near the Gamkein Shari says the Ramav, according to the Yiraim, right? According to Shabbat Halakha, that there is no coloring by food, so then you're allowed to put red wine into white wine. Venera Kitzat Raya Lidvarav Mahadaslife Simon Shin Yutet. The Noitin Beitza Litoicha Chardo Afagav the Oiselo Mara. That there's a Gemara that says you're allowed to put in eggs into the mustard, the egg whites into the mustard, which will lighten the mustard, will change its color. And yet the Gemara says it's mutar. So he brings the Gemara in source number 33. There, really, the question is about borer. But Agav, it's saying that you can do this, which means you can put white into the egg white into the mustard, and you're coloring it, and it's not a problem of coloring. I don't know. That's what you're saying. So far, I don't see any of that. Right? That's all your chidushim. Right now, we see is there or is there not. So you have the Shibbolek in the Bal Yiraim that says there isn't. Okay, perhaps because the malacha was not done on food in the Mishkan. The malacha was done for curtains, for material. So perhaps the malacha is only by materials and not by food. And we saw the Darchei Moshe that brought down the Rav Mimintz that says no, even by food. And we have a proof from the Gemara, perhaps that there is not by food. So let's take a look at Shulchan Aruch in source number 34. In source number 34, it says adding saffron, okay, to a food is mutar. The end there is no coloring by food. So Shulchan Aruch says what? There is no coloring by food. So you're allowed to put saffron and other type of spices that would color the food. Now he brings and Yesh Misha. This is the Sefer Yiraim. Shiva Lekha brought this down. Sha'omer sha'ochel tutim, someone who eats tutim or shar perot and other fruits that have color. He shouldn't touch with his hands cloths or clothes, right? Mishum saveya. Because what happened? You eat strawberries, your hands become strawberry-like, and then you touch a clothing, and you just painted the clothing. So you just did saveya on the clothing. Because remember, it's the clothing and not the food.
But according to Rabbi Shimon, no problem.
Why?
לא מתכוון.
Okay.
לא מתכוון, מה?
Let's see. Oh, so very good. You asked a very good question about a napkin. Why would a napkin be different than clothing? Because a napkin, you're wiping to throw it out, right? Right. So there is that. It's brought down. Yeah. Let's take a look. Very good. So let's go outside of the Tzurba for a moment. Says here the laws of Shabbat. He writes, some poskim rule that one who has stained his hands with a dyeing pigment, such as one who ate strawberries, beets, or pomegranates, needs to be careful not to touch his clothing or other cloth due to the prohibition of tzaveh. Okay? However, other poskim are lenient and rule that it's permitted to wipe dirty hands on a cloth. Practically, one should abide by the Strickland opinion. So he says, if you have a cloth, right, you shouldn't really touch it. You could, but you shouldn't. But then he writes, paper towel or other disposable material, since any coloring that is done is a minimal benefit, no reason you're doing it, because the paper towel will be discarded afterwards, it's permitted. Okay, so when it comes to disposable paper towels, napkins, and stuff like that, not a problem at all. The problem when they're saying is actual cloth and actual clothing that you're going to keep around. All right, so then you have the coloring that's there. But they're still disposable.
Plastic.
Oh, so those it's allowed, but better not. Those it's allowed, but better not. Okay, because you have the Sefer Yerayim that says don't do that. So you should try not to. Tarchli Zoher. You should try to be careful when it comes to actual cloth that you're not throwing out. The same thing applies, he says over here, in the Laws of Shabbat, number 21 on page 38, outside of the Tzurba. He says putting it on plastic or paper plate. Okay? So I have a paper plate, and I'm putting a food with color on it. What's going to happen? The plate's going to become colored. It's the same thing, right? Even though the plate will become dyed, you're throwing it right out, so it's not considered that you're coloring it. Okay? So it seems to be that it has to be lasting. Okay? The color has to be staying. Okay. Let's take a look 1 second in the Yalkut Yosef. He brings down on page 379, halakha, just like we saw it. There is no restriction by food, and you're allowed to put in any type of color onto food to make it more nicer. And it's not the fringe and does not infringe upon the restriction of malacha of tzurba. Right? It says in Shulchan Aruch, source 34, in the bold of tzurba, pita b'mashke haperos l'itein lamba the ain tzivia b'oichlin. There's no problem with that at all. Okay, so we came out at this point. The Shulchan Aruch is differentiating, like we differentiated from the start, between clothing, between cloth, between materials, fabric, right, and food. No tzurba by food. Seems to be that the malacha is applicable, as it was in the Mishkan, on material. But even so, even if you're eating it and your hands are cold, you're not really coloring because you're not wanting to do that. Still, cloth you shouldn't touch, but disposables is not a problem. Okay. Again, the Gemara never says clearly that there's no tzvi'ah by ochlin. It doesn't say that. There's no tzvi'ah by ochlin. So there's another Gemara that seems to be saying that there is tzvi'ah by ochlin. Doesn't say beferish, but it seems to be saying.
How could it be? I don't understand. Because every ochel you have with the tablinim, it's with some oil, with some kurkum, other. Okay, if you eat it on those days, they used to eat with their hands. Okay, they used to eat with their hands, and if they eat with their hands, for some reason they touch over here, touch over there, then it's tzviyah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everything you had was stained?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm
saying. You should wash it first. Okay. Now let's take a look at source 35, where the Gemara seems to be saying that there could be tzaveh by food. Let's see. Shaykhet Meshum Ma'achai. Someone does shchita on Shabbat. For what is he chayiv?
Not allowed.
So he did it. So what's he chayiv for? So Rav Omer Meshum Tzaveh. Rav says because he's coloring. Right? The blood comes out and he's coloring. Meshum Omer Meshum Nitilat Neshama. What do you mean? Why he's chayiv? He's killing something.
Yeah.
That's why he's chayiv. So now the Gemara asks, Meshum Tzaveh Ein Meshum Nitilat Neshama Lo. Because of coloring, he's chayav according to Rav, but according to Neshama, he's not. Same ma'ap Meshum Tzaveh. Yeah, of course he's chayav because he's killing, but also because of coloring. So Omar Rav said, Milta Damri. I will say something. Ema Milta. The Lord lead to the Dari by throwing the chualai. I don't want people to laugh at me afterwards. Tzaveh b'mai nicholai. Why does he want this coloring? Why is he saying if you're shech, you're also chayav for coloring? Does he know why? There's a nicha. He wants it because when you slaughter and the blood goes on the meat, right? The blood goes on the animal. People see it's fresh blood, and if it's fresh blood, then what?
But it's Shabbat.
But if it's fresh blood, what does it mean fresh blood? If I see fresh blood on meat,
it's the fresh meat.
It's fresh meat, so they're gonna want to buy it. So it's nichola. The fact that he shechted it, right, and now there's blood on the meat and stuff. He's gonna want to buy it afterwards. So it's coloring. That's nichola.
Who's telling you Shabbat?
No one's selling it on Shabbat, but he's shachting it on Shabbat. He's not allowed to, but he is. And yeah, forget all that. The idea of the Gemara is, we said there is no coloring by food. And now all of a sudden you're saying, Rav is saying that if you shecht an animal, right, and one of the things you're chayiv for is tzurba. What's the meat? Meat's food. So there is tzurba by food, right? And that's the nishmat adam. This is the chay adam, it's nishmat adam.
But it's
And
what? That's why I want to know. What? What is coloring of it?
the blood of the animal that he shechted is getting the meat and the skin red.
Yeah,
so what? That's coloring food. And the Gemara says it's chay mishum tzurba. I don't understand. What's the so?
The blood was there before. It's not like it's a new blood.
Okay, so here's the case. Here's the animal. He's alive. There's no blood stained on the meat or the hide at this point. I now shecht it. The blood comes out. It goes on this piece of meat. It makes it all red. That's tzurba. That's coloring. That's what the Gemara says. And he says nicha because now people are going to buy it because he wants it there. Because people will see it. They're going to think it's fresh and take it. So the Gemara is saying that apparently there could be tzurba on the meat, which meat is food. So says in Nishmas Adam, he says that I know the Araim wrote, he says that there's no tzurba by food, but I'm not sure. Because here our Gemara says, one who slaughters, right? Because even though it's meat, and meat is food. And he says the whitening of the egg white to the mustard, that's maybe not a type of dye. Dye is usually a color. You don't have the dye of white, right? At least maybe in the old days, they didn't have the white dye. It was, you had color dyes. And so therefore maybe white's not considered coloring, he wants to say. So therefore the egg white, it's okay in the mustard. He says maybe say if your rain is going like the Rambam says it has to be a permanent substance and a permanent surface. But he says, I don't know where you get the permission to use saffron, to use a colored spice on Shabbat, because perhaps there is coloring on Shabbat. So go down to the bold part in source 36 on page 175. He says, I'll call him nearly, and he says to me, professionals who prepare types of delicacies and color them, and similarly wine sellers who typically color the wine, I'm concerned that they may be liable to bring a sin offering according to the Smag and the Araim. He says, if they're coloring on Shabbat, food and wine, they probably have to bring a hatat, because it's a locha d'oraita. This Gemara says you can color meat. And he says, venerally, the zedat harabi Avraham mints shevi b'darchei Moshe she'asal yiten yain edom yain lavan. The one that we saw, he said you can't put red wine into white wine because you're doing tzurba. That's because we hold there is tzurba by food. Okay, and based on this Gemara. He says, if you want to permit putting saffron, it has to be that you're putting the saffron not for the color. You're putting the saffron just for the taste. And it comes the color, but you don't want it, right? And therefore, maybe there, it would be permissible. So the Chai Adam, is Nishmas Adam, he is saying that what? There is tzurba by food. And one has to be very careful. And perhaps only if you're doing it for taste and not for food, then maybe it's permissible. But otherwise, there is. So we have now as follows. Sefer Yereim, Shulchan Aruch, they all say there is no tzurba by food. You have the Chai Adam says there is tzurba by food. Now how? How does the Shulchan Aruch and how would the Sefer Yereim understand this Gemara where it says you shech the animal and it reddens the meat, which is food, right? And we say that's tzurba. I thought there is no tzurba by food. So how do you understand that? And that's the whole Chai Adam's Chiddush. Take a look to Bir Halacha. Bir Halacha in source 37. And he says, I saw in the Or Zarua, Himasharita Or Zarua, the Pirish, Amada Amar, that he likes this color, B'nei Shechita, Hainu, this is for what? The hide, the leather of the animal. Right? Do you eat the leather? No. So what's the Gemara talking about? I want the red, the color for what when I do shechita? On the leather, on the hide, not the meat. Right? So This is the way that the Sefer Reim understand this Gemara. Is that when it says that when you shech, you cause the coloring, you're causing the coloring on what? On basar? There is no coloring by food. It must be it's coloring the hide, and that's the problem. Okay? So again, we have this Machokus and Deot, we have the Shulchan Aruch, and now says the Pri Megadim. Let's take a look at Pri Megadim, source 38. And the Pri Megadim says, we should take a look. First he says, Vayayin Edom B'Lavan Shari. Putting red wine into white wine is permissible. Why? Why is it permissible? Either way, it's permissible. There is no coloring by food. We hold there is no coloring by food. Right? That's the way we hold Halach L'Maisa. Even he does it just for the color, not for the taste. Right? Not like Nishmas Adam, not like Chai Adam. You can even do if you want to do for color. And now he says we got to be careful about one thing. He says you be careful. Those who sell whiskey and honey water may add color to whiskey and honey water for the sake of buyers who prefer this. It's not considered like the cooked food where you're putting saffron. Because the color, he's saying like this: if I'm doing it on Shabbat, but not for Shabbat, I'm doing it on Shabbat for a coloring to last later, to sell the whiskey later. Is that permissible? Oh. Okay. Says maybe that's considered a permanent dye. Maybe that's the problem, says the Pri Megadim. Okay. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah in source 39. He puts everything together. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mutter. Even though it's going to get red. But feeling but according to what's written in the Nishmat Adam, it's correct to avoid this. So according to Pri Megadim, according to Shulchan Aruch, Sefer Yereim, mutar, no problem. Pri Megadim, the Chai Adam, you want to be careful. Now he says, that people will buy it. That's not permitted. Okay? So Mishnah Berurah says the same thing. If you're doing it to something that you're planning on selling, that you can't do. Okay? On Shabbat, where you can add color, it's when you're eating it, when you're going to drink it, not when you're planning to sell it. That's not permissible. Okay. What? Oh. Right, lived in the chol. That's lived in the chol. You're doing a weekday activity. So doing stuff for after Shabbat, to sell and stuff like that would not be permissible in Tzurba. Okay, so what do we come out with? So far at this point, we have the Chai Adam and his Nishas Adam that says there is Tzurba to some degree by food, and one should be careful. Perhaps if you're doing it for taste, it'll be permissible. And then we have Shulchan Aruch, Sefer Reim, Pri Megadim, or Zerua, and they all Rambam, and they all say allowed, no problem. Even if you're doing it for appearance, if you're doing just for look, not even for taste, it'd be allowed because there is no by food. Okay.
Well, I'm Israel doing it. You know?
Yeah.
That's the halacha now.
And he says, prefers to give it a more palatable appearance. And it's not the malacha of Tzurba. Okay. Now, since the Mishnah Berurah said that, you should do somewhat like the Nishmat Adam, even though we don't hold like the Chai Adam, but it says you should try to. Therefore, he says what Rabbi Avnei was saying the whole time. What were you saying? Right into red into white. Which way should you do it? What's the way you say they do it? Why would it make a difference? What's the difference in the ways you do it?
The white, nothing changed.
Still gonna be red. Okay.
If you're gonna put white and
then the red. Now you're coloring. Okay. So says the Mishnah Berurah. He says the same idea when it comes to tea essence, right? You prepare the tea essence. So if I have water and I put tea essence, I'm now coloring the water. If I do the other way around, essence. Put the water into the tea essence. Because this way you'll stay away from Tzurba. Okay, if you're putting it in a way that you're not really coloring it, right? You're not coloring the water. You're adding the water to the essence, and it's already done. You put the essence into the water; it's more of a coloring. So he says the person should try to do that. The same thing with the red and the white, right? Instead of putting the red into the white, put the white into the red. Okay. By the way, again, we can do it either way, and it's not a problem at all. If you want to be a little bit more machmer, that's a nice thing to do. Okay. That we already saw. Yeah, not a problem. We saw for us, ice is not a problem. Okay. And it says source 41 on page 177. Ein isur tzvi'a ba'ochlin kol od lo yitkaven l'tzvi'at ha'ma'achal. As long as one intends only to prepare the food, rak l'tikun or shipur tamoy, right? He wants to improve the taste. The same mutter litain tamtzit te. There we are. Put tea essence, red wine, raspberry juice to the water, and the like. You're not having kavana to color it. I want my wine. I want my tea. I want my coffee. I'm not wanting to make it dark. It gets dark, right? So that's the Shemir Shabbat Chadat says. As long as he's not lo yitkaving with tzviat ma'achal. He's not doing it to get the color. He's doing it to get the food. He's doing it to get the drink. Okay. And he says, if you take a look on page 178 in the bold, that even if one's sole intention is to improve the flavor, it's preferable to first place the coloring, such as the tea, red wine, or raspberry juice in the cup, and to only add the water afterwards, right? You start with the color and then put in the non-color, not the other way around. So again, the Shmirat Shabbat Hilchata and Mishnah Berurah, the Chayei Adam, they're all being careful that there might be tzoveya by Ochlin, and therefore they say you can do it in this way. Here, I'm just going to read from the Yalkut Yosef outside the Tzurba for a moment. He says it's permissible to make tea on Shabbat by pouring tea concentrate into the hot water. This is not the malacha of tzoveya, because there is no tzoveya by food. There are poskim who say first pour the concentrate into the cup and then add the hot water on top of it. Since the rule that there is prohibition against coloring, technically it's not necessary to follow the stringency, but anyone who does so will receive a special bracha. Okay, so same thing. Permissible to add red wine to white wine. It does not infringe upon the malacha of tzoveya, even if one's intention is mixing the beverage is to color it. We again hold that there is no problem of tzoveya by Ochlin, even for the color. It doesn't make a difference. If you want it, be a little more machmer and do the other way around, but you don't have to be machmer. Okay, there is no tzoveya by Ochlin, according to us. Now, the Ben Ish Chai, in Sefer Rav Palim, he has this huge chidush in source 42. His chidush is as follows. He says, one second. You know why there's no tzoveya by Ochlin? Because what was tzoveya? What was the color? According to the Bavli, not according to the Sham, not beating up the skin. According to the Bavli, it was dyeing. You had a liquid, right? A liquid with a color in it. You put stuff in it, and you make it a color. Tzoveya is liquid. So food items, and you put spice on food, there's no liquid involved. So that's why he's saying tzoveya by Ochlin. When it comes to liquids, maybe you shouldn't color liquids on Shabbat, says the Ben Ish Chai. Because the whole tzoveya is liquid-based. Dyes, colors that you make with the liquid. Therefore, says the Ben Ish Chai, and his Sefer Rav Palim, says don't color liquids. Okay? Yeah, seems there will be a problem according to him. There's a cause to decree regarding all liquids, mashkin, right? That appearance changes because of them. Even if you don't do it for the color, and even if the substances involved are not types of coloring, still you shouldn't do it, right? Because it's very similar to the deoraita malacha of tzoveya. So that's the Rav Palim. It's a huge chiddush. He's saying you can't put any coloring into any liquids on Shabbat. Because it's too close to the melacha of tzaveh of the mishkan, which is making a liquid dye and putting stuff inside. So Chacham Ovadia in Shal Sechuvah Yaviyah Omer, he says, I saw what Rabbeinu Yosef Haim wrote in his Rav Baalim. And he wrote, Yesh Ligzar, Chol Mashkin, that you put in the color, if they had Dover, Amatilatoy. Mishum, the Dama Loisa ain't a Tzaveh. It looks too close like Tzaveh. But he says Chamavadia, but Lefi Aniyas Dati, he says this whole thing doesn't make sense. Shaharei Adover Yadua, Sha'achar Chasima Satamid, Ein Ligzar Gezeros Medatenu. We don't make up our new Gezerot. We don't make up Gezerot based on our own knowledges after the Talmud, right? The Talmud never said you can't put any color into liquid on Shabbat because it's too close to the Melacha of Tzaveh. It's not brought down. So says Chamavadia, therefore you can't make this new Gezerah, and be no problem with coloring a liquid on Shabbat. Okay, so you have this Chedush of the Ben Ish Chai, and Chamavadia says no, it doesn't work that way.
Other people
Shamelch is before the Talmud, no?
Huh?
Shamelch is before the Talmud.
Yeah, but
We're saying no Chidushim, no Gezerot after the Talmud.
What is
Talmud,
Talmud or Talmud?
Chatzima sa Talmud. Ein Ligzar Gezeres Medatenu. We don't make it with Gezerot. Okay, so right, so we can't make our own Gezerah on these things. So let's take a look in the Yalkut Yosef outside the store for a moment, and he says Beferish, shame, she'ain tzaviyah ba'oichlin, kach ain't tzaviyah b'mashkin. He says it very clearly. Same way, there's no coloring by food, there's no coloring by drinks, and therefore it's permissible to mix a soft drink concentrate in water on Shabbat. You don't have to prepare it in advance. You may mix water with arak, although this causes the clear liquid to turn white and cloudy. No problem. Some Paiskim wrote that you should first pour the concentrate, again, put the color first, then put the water on top of it. Technically, it's not necessary. You do it, to all bracha. I'll get an extra bracha for it. All right, he's being more machmir. So, in the end of the day, according to Chamavadia, there is no tzveya by food, no tzveya by drinks, even if you want to do it for the appearance, no problemos whatsoever. Okay? The issue would be, and I don't think he brings it down over here, but he does bring it down in multiple places here. Here, for example, this would be an issue. Although he said you're allowed to color food on Shabbat, that's only if someone colors the food with something edible. Okay? So it's still remaining food. But if it's forbidden to paint food with inedible paints. Okay? If you're painting it, sometimes they do it in the projects. They take rice and other things like that, and they put real paint on it. Okay? That would not be allowed. So even though we say Ein Tzei B'Oichlin, it has to remain Oichlin. Right? Since it's no longer remaining Oichlin, then you paint it. You painted paint. You painted and it's not food anymore, so to speak. Understand? Right? In order to note Tzaveh B'Oichlin, it has to be Oichlin. You still have to be able to eat it. If you no longer can eat it because you painted it, then that's not considered Oichlin. That's also okay. So it has to remain food. All right. Now comes. All right, that was all about food. Now comes. You take a look at the picture on page 179. I don't know what that picture is. Okay, so that's the toilet bowl. Okay, that's the toilet bowl that some people put the deodorizer, the sanitizer, and it gives a blue liquid into the toilet bowl. Okay, what would be the problem on Shabbat? You have coloring. You're coloring the toilet bowl. Can one do that? Can one leave that deodorizer, the sanitizer in the toilet bowl, and every time you flush, it goes into the toilet, and then new water comes out and it gets blue all over again. So says in Shirat Shabbat Kilchata. Right, and now we're not doing it with Oichlin. Now we're out. We have the Oichlin part. Now we're going to the toilet. All right. He says one may add a cleaning agent or a deodorizer to the toilet, but one should avoid using one that colors the water. Right? The colored deodorizer is already in the toilet before Shabbat. One should remove it before Shabbat begins. Okay, so he doesn't want you to have the colored one there. Now, in his ha'ara, he brings from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach a kula, and he says, but if there is no cleaner, it does not change the color of the water. All right, then this is permitted if one is not particular about the color, and one's intention is to only purify the water. The Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said, if I'm just leaving it there because I need to have it deodorized, I need to have the sanitizer there, and I don't have anything else. I really don't care about the color. I don't care if it's pink, I don't care if it's white, I don't care if it's green. I just want to deodorize, the sanitizer. So then he says, it wouldn't be a problem because we're going to see. Chamavad is going to bring down the reasons why it is, but it's basically that I don't really care about. It's not for me. I don't really want it. We're going to see. Chamavad is going to bring down the three reasons to be Michael over here.
Maybe you do want it, tells that
The color.
shows you that it's working.
You really don't care. If it's blue, if it's coloring it blue. If there was another way for it to tell you, you don't mind.
If you know.
I hear. Okay. They don't have the colorless deodorizer, the sanitizers? I really don't know. They don't. Okay. The Orchat Shabbat says, Orchat Shabbat is very strict. This is Rabbi Reuben, right? And he says that what? Can't do it. If it colors the water, you can't do it. Can't put it in. You can't. He says straight up, you can't. No, talking about that's oichlin. That's food. This is the toilet bowl. Don't confuse the food with the toilet bowl. The little kids confuse it, but we shouldn't. There's a food and there's a toilet bowl. Okay. So we're seeing it according to the Chot Shabbat. According to the Chot Shabbat, don't use it. According to Shlomo Zalman, shouldn't use it. But if you have it and you need it, then you could if you really don't want the color. Now, Chazon Ovadia says, let's take a look at Chazon Ovadia. Chazon Ovadia says it's permissible. He's very lenient. He says a few reasons. First of all, he says, remember, the loch of tzveya when it's permanent. Here, the tzveya is never permanent. It becomes blue, flush, gone. No, it's not long lasting. So you don't have that problem. So the whole thing is the Rabbanan. Right? The Oraita is when it stays there, when it's on a permanent surface. That's the Oraita. If it's not staying there, it's only the Rabbanan. So first of all, the whole issue is the Rabbanan. And since one who flushes the water is not intent to color it, okay? Only wants to clean it. So it's Sikresha. Okay. Then he says, furthermore, it's just a grumma, right? I'm not coloring it, I'm flushing it, and then it colors. It's not me. It's a grumma. Okay. So basically he's saying it's two rabbanans and it's a Sikresha de loyach. So there's no reason why you can't use it. So therefore, it's permissible. It's two rabbanans, and it's Sikresha de loyach, and it's mutar. So Chamavaji says you can use it. What's the problem?
You're racing slowly the color every time you flush.
It's not considered a racing. That's not considered a racing. So the Maisa, it's permissible to use that. It's permissible to use that the sanitizer. So here in the Yalkut Yosef, outside the Tzurba for a moment, he says some posts can rule that it's permissible to use a toilet bowl on Shabbat even if it's equipped with a disinfectant that turns the water blue each time. The other posts can rule that it's forbidden. Technically, the halacha is like the first opinion that it's permitted. There's no problem of tzeveya, and it doesn't create a fragrance in the water. Also, because you saw Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said maybe it's molded. I'm creating a scent. I'm creating a new smell. Says Chamavadia, no such thing. There's no molded by smells, and therefore it is permissible. It's lenient. Again, if you want to be machmer, no problem. But certain people, certain families, certain people come, guests and stuff like that, who wants the bathroom to have what this, that, you need the sanitizer. All right, bro. Today you have more than one bathroom. What about you only had one bathroom? Then what? All right, so there is room to be makel over there. Says the Pnini Halacha, Elazar Melamed says the same idea. He says that what? That in practice it's preferable to use a clear toilet boy cleaner. However, if one finds himself in a place where the clean material is colored, no problem. You can flush the toilet. Don't leave your poop there. Flush it. It's okay, even if it's blue there. Okay? And use a colored toilet boy cleaner. you have what to rely upon. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna come to one more idea, one more halacha about Tzurba. And this is certain people, Baruch Hashem, they have glasses and they like what's called transition lenses. You've heard of these?
Surveyor, the blue thing, very soon when you pee, becomes water becomes yellow. You only white pee. You only white pee.
Go ahead. Say everything else. First of all, the idea is that. So we said that if you don't really want the color there, it's not a problem, right? So a person doesn't really want his color to stay in his toilet bowl, so it's not a problem. Okay, so it's also just part of your hygiene and stuff like that. All right. The real question is, what about a person's bleeding? And if you want to stop the bleeding, and I want to put a Band-Aid on it, all right? Okay. Maybe I should wash the blood first off him. So when I put the Band-Aid, it's going to be less reddish, becoming Tzurba. Okay. Actually, since we brought it up, let's just take a look at that. He brings it over here. Actually, he says, where did he bring it? Okay. Here's about the wound. One who's bleeding should preferably first wash the blood away before placing the gauze. Even though some blood may continue to come in afterward and stain the gauze, since it's done indirectly, one may be lenient. If one needs to place a cloth directly in the wound to stop the bleeding, cannot wash it out first. One should preferably use a red cloth, right? This is also not possible. One may even use a white cloth. All right, I'll just tell you, if a guy's bleeding out, right, a lot of blood, don't start looking for a red cloth. Okay, go ahead and do whatever you have to stop the blood. All right, we're talking about the guy's bleeding a little bit, whatever, and you can get away with getting something else on there. That would be better. Okay, now, like we talk about transitional lenses. Am I saying transition lenses? What is this? People have the glasses, and when they walk out in the sun, the glasses turn into sunglasses. Right? They come dark. Then he walks back into the room and comes back clear. So is that painting on Shabbat or not? Is that Tzurba or not? So let's take it before you say yes, no. Look what the Igros Moshe has to say. Okay. Igros Moshe, what does he say? Regarding, hey, it's going to be a bestseller, right? Okay. Regarding the lenses called photogray. Okay, so another name for traditional lenses is photogray, which are made in such a way that when walks in the sun, they are like sunglasses. When walks in the shade, after a few minutes, they come back to clear, like regular glasses. Says Rav Moshe, I don't see any problem involved. Not Tzurba and not mitakin mana, and not considered fixing makavipatish, right? It's not fixing something, not completing an item, not completing a keli, and it's not coloring, as nothing is colored, as the original appearance returns, and the process repeats itself many times. Okay, it's its process. It becomes clear, it becomes dark, clear, dark. It's not coloring. That's the way that item works, right? There's a difference between coloring and the way an item works. An item goes from one to the other, back and forth. That's not considered coloring, says Rav Moshe. As even if someone colored substance is inserted over the lens or inside it, it is not called the lens, it merely covers it. And it's not considered completing the keli, as this is already a completed keli. It's already a lens. And that's the way it's made. So it's not a problem at all. Says Igros Moshe, not an issue. Transition lenses, not an issue. Here in the laws of Shabbat, he brings Baruch Hashem. Say a good class today. Okay. He brings over here. He brings over here 1 second. What is this? 6. Okay. Outside of the Tzurba. He brings a few more reasons. He says, no, okay, so he's talking about this already design function. That was a good motion. That's the way it's made. The color is temporary, Tzitz Eliezer says. and it's only dependent on the sun's exposure. The coloring effect is an indirect occurrence. It's a grama, right? And that's not the way you dye something. You dye something directly. You don't indirectly dye something. And the purpose of the color changes merely to darken the lens, and it doesn't create any coloring effect. Also, Igrit Moshe, Mitzel Chachma, Azin Deberu, Mishnah Halachot. So everybody seems to say no problem with these photo gray, photochromic transition lenses. Okay, you have such glasses. What? Mutzer. Hamish Mukim. Hamish Mukim. Okay. Page 183. We're going to deal now briefly at Memachik. What's Memachik? Memachik is another malacha. It's smoothing the animal hides. They would remove the hairs of the hide, and the animal has hair. You don't want leather with hair on it, right? So you would smooth it, and between pillars, and you would take out the hair. So now, take out the hair from the hide. Okay, so now, as a tolda, you have memarech, which is spreading cream. Spreading cream on Shabbat would be a problem of smoothing something out. So now the question is, and that's if I'm spreading like cream on a wound or something like this. Now the question is there an issue of spreading by food? Can I take peanut butter and spread it out on my bread?
Why not?
Can I take tuna, take it from the jar, right? Or take it from the whatever you have, the packet, put it on a plate, and then smooth it out? Can I put frosting that was already made before Shabbat? Because you can't make frosting on Shabbat of lush, but you can take frosting that was already made. Can I put it on the cake?
It's temporary, no? So it's okay. It's temporary. It's not something.
Say again?
It's temporary, so it should be okay. It's not. It has to. Melacha has to be something that will last, no? So in this case, it's temporary.
Let's see what the Mordechai says. The Mordechai says. He says that what? He says, you know why it should be permissible to spread things out? Because can I eat the peanut butter without spreading it? Can I eat the tuna without spreading it?
No.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's not edible? It's not edible? It's not edible? It's edible. How many people don't eat that? You've never seen people come to these kids, they take a spoon of peanut butter and put it in their mouth. Seen it all the time. You never seen it?
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that.
It's American food.
Right. So you can eat this food without spreading it. Therefore, it's not considered spreading because it's just. So let's take a look at the next one. Take a look at the Ramah. The Ramah says, it's not considered smoothing out. Since I can eat it technically without spreading it. And he says, but to be strict a little bit, a dish made from apples and like, which is commonly smooth, so if you don't do it, in cases that you usually would smooth, like you say, you don't eat it without smoothing it, so then you get a bracha if you don't do it. But he doesn't seem to say it's also. So it comes to be food, you can spread it out. Magen Abraham says, interesting. And he says, you know what spreading is? Why am I spreading it out? So spreading it out, I'm putting on a piece of bread, I'm spreading it out because I want to fill the empty space. Okay, I have a piece of bread, I put cream cheese on it, I put peanut butter on it. It's not spreading it out to smooth it. I'm spreading it out so the whole bread has cream cheese. Right? The other day I went into the bakery next to my work, Calf's Bakery. I ordered a sandwich there. So I told the guy, put on cream cheese. Putting on the cream cheese. He missed a whole big piece on the bread, no cream cheese. So I told him, hello, amigo, here also, put more. He puts a thin layer. I said, put more. You want to fill up the space. I want to, every bite I take, I want cream cheese. I don't want to take a bite without cream cheese in there. And I don't know how he charged me. I got 10% off because I had my Maimonides bag. So you get 10% off. Okay. So but what's it called? But what is You want to spread it out so the whole bread is filled. So that's what my Abraham says. I'm not spreading it to spread it. I'm spreading it to fill the empty space. If there's no problem. Right. I'm not doing anything. I'm just spreading it out. Just spreading it out. The Bir Allah, he says, again, one's motivation in smoothing is not for the smoothing itself, but merely to fill the empty area. This is a psik ratio. It'll definitely be smooth. But here, since it's possible to be lean, for another reason, that it's possible to eat without smoothing. There's no reason to be strict at all. So really what it is comes out again and again and again. Since I can eat it without smoothing it is not a problem.
Well, you could say about
since I can
food.
eat the food,
You could
it's not considered smooth.
But you could say about every food. Since you can eat it.
The idea is I can't use the hide with the hair on it. So I have to smooth it to take out the hair to make it usable. Right? Same thing with the cream. When I put on the body, I need to smooth it so it goes all over the body, so everywhere it goes on. The food, I don't need to smooth it. I can eat it without. I'm just smoothing it to stam, and it's easier to eat. The derech lachila, and that's why it's permissible. That's what Tzurba said. The Piskei Teshuvot, he says to spread it when something is not edible, not spread, that's going to be a problem because we're saying only if it's edible and then you spread it, it's okay. If it's edible first, even without spreading, and things it's okay. But it's not edible, and then I want to spread it now, it becomes edible. That Meister would be could be a problem, right? Let's take a look in the laws of Shabbat how he brings down this halacha about spreading food. And he writes over here, the machek u'memarech does not apply to foods. Therefore, one may smear frosting on a cake. One may smooth the surface of a tuna or egg salad, and the like. One may also smear butter, avocado, or banana on a piece of bread. So you can do all these things because these things are really edible beforehand. So it's not a problem. So I asked the question. I asked the question as follows: can I smooth the tuna or the egg salad to make it look decorative? Decorative. I want to make like not like a shape, but sometimes you smooth it. It looks nicer when you smooth it a certain way. Can I do it decorative?
No.
Why not? For the honor of Shabbat.
Can one or can one not?
Beautify Shabbat, don't make Shabbat. It's more enjoyable.
Because we see that take a look at the Piskei Teshuvot. He says if you're doing it for decoration, that might be another problem. What was the issue here? They said we want to fill the space of the bread, right? We want to you can eat it that way. You just want to fill the space of the bread. And here now I'm smoothing it out to decorate it. So maybe it's not allowed there. It's for decoration now. So
we can compare this to tying shoelaces on Shabbat. We can temporarily tie a shoe and then throughout the week untie it. And the same thing, the salad is spread for time being. That's the way you eat it, and you can cover Shabbat, and at the same time it's going to be eaten right away.
So I'll tell you what they answered me. They answered me. They said that if you're planning to eat it right away, and as long as you're not making shapes and designs, then it would be okay. Apparently, I was told today that, and maybe Tzion can tell us this is true. I don't know. It's in the catering business. Apparently, sometimes they take tuna and they put it out in the shape of a fish.
Oh, yeah.
In the shape of a fish. Take the tuna and they shape it out into a fish. Okay, you can't do that on Shabbat. You cannot make it into a shape of a fish on Shabbat. Same thing with the watermelon, decorating the watermelon, right? And cutting it in a way to make it decorative. You can't do that on Shabbat. That's making shapes. We're going to get into that in a minute. Okay, let's move on. So we said spreading food out simply, even a little bit decoratively, is okay as long as you're eating it and it can be added. It could have eaten beforehand. Okay, measuring and weighing food. Okay, some people don't know it's a problem. Don't know this is a malacha. Okay, this is measuring. Says the Gemara, measuring, not Bukharian measuring, real measuring. Checking something, how much it weighs, how much it's length, tall, height. No, with a ruler, with a scale. Well, let's say I have a mechanical scale, a measuring cup. Okay, mitzvah. We didn't get there yet. Okay, but he's right. Okay. Why scale? It's a mechanical. It's not much.
That's
Not. And if it's not electrical, the mechanical scale, old scale. We're going to see that possibly not. Let's see. One may seal a window and measure and tie and not on Shabbat, says the Mishnah. Gemara says what? But one time, Ula iklu berish kusa. He was sitting in the what is this? The in the water, in the tub, and he was measuring it. And Amalei said to him, in the Emrei the Amrei Rabbanan Medida the mitzvah, where they say you're allowed to measure, it's only for measuring for a mitzvah. La mitzvah mi. I remember who said you can do it. So he says, I was just playing around. I was acting absent-mindedly. I wasn't really measuring. Okay, so it seems that measuring something not for the sake of a mitzvah is not allowed on Shabbat. So if someone wants to check how tall he is, I can't find the mitzvah of that. Okay, he can't do that. Take a look at Tosfot. Tosfot says that what is the issue with measuring? He says that's uvdidachol. Right? It's not a true malacha, but rather it is a weekday activity. Therefore, you don't do it on Shabbat. Says the Shulchan Aruch, source 58. You're allowed to measure stuff for mitzvah. For example, limdod im yesh mikvah arba'im sa. You want to know if the mikvah is kosher. You have to know it has enough water in there. You're allowed to do that measuring on Shabbat. Or to measure the belt of an ill person. Some people were sick. You want to see how much weight they lost, so you would check their belt according to them, right? So you're allowed to do that because it's measuring for a mitzvah. Kuach nefesh, you got to save the guy. Like you also mentioned before about matzah, right? Exactly. So even more, Shabbat Kilchata says if you need to weigh using a mechanical scale the measure of the baby food, right? Certain babies they have to make sure they eat enough. They don't eat enough; it's very dangerous for them. So you're allowed to measure it on Shabbat. It's a mitzvah. Of the kuach nefesh. He says if you get away with just looking at it, fine. But even for an adult, if you need it, it's okay. Says the Yalkut Yosef, Shabbat, right? Of course, right, with a measurement that's not electronical. L'tzarech mitzvah, right? The chagon, liyada im yesh b'padzo shir kebetza b'shvil sudat Shabbat. I have to know if it has enough bread for sudat Shabbat. I'm allowed to use the scale. Or lishkol share kazayid matzah b'leil Pesach. Rami's example. You're allowed to do that. Not a problem because it's a mitzvah. If you could do it before Shabbat, even better. You're allowed to measure it on Shabbat. Okay, so you're allowed to measure for a dvar mitzvah. That's allowed. Not a dvar mitzvah, you can't measure. So if a guy wants to walk around on Shabbat in his house and say, here I want to put closet. How much space I have here? Let me see. And he takes out the measuring tape. He can't do that. Shouldn't be measuring on Shabbat if it's not for a dvar mitzvah. Right? Try checking your height on Shabbat with a measuring tape. You can't do it. It's asur. Don't do the chol. Not allowed. Okay. What about using a thermometer? Okay. Again, not an electrical thermometer. We're talking about one of the today those mercury thermometers are not mercury thermometers, but they work as mercury thermometers, right? Basically, it's the old school thermometers. Remember the ones that you shake down, right? You put it, and then you wait for it to come up. Okay, so it's measuring. Can I use it to measure? Well, why are you using a thermometer? Usually using a thermometer on a person who's not feeling well, right? So then it's for a chola, so which it's pikuach nefesh, so it's a mitzvah. Even though it's not really pikuach nefesh, but it's a chola, it's allowed. You're allowed to use a non-electrical thermometer on Shabbat. So every Jewish house that's keeping Shabbat and they have kids and stuff like that, they should get the Shabbos thermometer, right?
When I was a kid, the father had the thermometer put on
the forehead thermometer.
Colored up.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be the same idea, right? It'll be the same idea. Is it so? Is it the issue of tzavea?
It's just temporary. Turn color.
I was thinking about that, and I was thinking it's probably like the glass, but it's anything.
Why is it like the glasses?
But not like the glass.
It's coming in and out.
Doing what it's got to do, what time it's got to do.
You're right. Yeah, I think you're right on that. I'll get back to you on that, but I think Mordechai's svara is very, very solid. It's the way it's built, and that's the way it works. You're not stamp coloring. You're doing it for chola. So you're allowed to measure in that case, and that's the way you're doing the measuring, right? So the question is by the mercury. Why is that not severe? Why are you thinking it's a mercury thermometer is not severe? It's also it's an empty, clear place, and then it reddens up, right? Is that severe, or is that saying I'm just pouring it from one place, like pouring it from one place to the other? Okay. Seems to be that it'll be as long as it's not electrical. What? What? It's just, I'm saying it's just an expansion. Right. Okay. So the old ones are mercury. I'm saying the mercury light. Yeah.
Maybe Moshe, there's a couple of questions over there on the chat.
Okay. So let's take a look at the chat. See what we can answer here. I sometimes invert a round or oval bowl that has food in it that maintains the shape. Is that okay? You're not making the shape. You're just taking it out of the thing. Not a problem. What about measuring drink or food for someone to eat shiurim on Yom Kippur? So that would be a mitzvah, and therefore it would be permissible. What? Yeah, but he's sick. He needs to eat. That's the mitzvah. Yeah. Can you read an outdoor thermometer that's mounted on a house? Yeah, you can read an outdoor thermometer mounted on a house. Not a problem. Okay, fine. All right. Now we're coming to our last topic over here, which is making signs and shapes in a food. Okay. He writes over here, it's permitted. Okay, it's good Gemara. Where Huna says, "Mutter la'asot simon b'basar." You're allowed to make a sign in the meat, talking about on Yom Tov, so that a person doesn't mistake it for another person's meat. So you have some meat going there, so I cut mine in triangles, right? It's like Rabbi Huna would do. He would cut them in triangles, and this way he made a sign on the meat on Yom Tov. The Sefer Rekeach said, right? So you have a Rishon. The Yom Tov Aser l'samin boy. You're not allowed to put signs in food on Yom Tov. So you have a Gemara that says you're making triangles, not a problem. The Sefer Rekeach says no, you can't make signs in it. Chai Adam says the person making dough into the shape of a bird or another shape is forbidden, and even if you're doing it by hand. The Pri Megadim also writes, cutting a hole in the matzah designed in a particular shape is also forbidden. Right? Making a hole in the afikoman with the knife, intentionally in the shape of a circle or triangle like a Magen David, it's forbidden. Certainly making shapes of a star, a person, the like in the food is obviously an issa d'Rabbanan. Okay, so looks like making shapes and signs in a food is an issa d'Rabbanan. So how do we deal with this Gemara? The Gemara says that they cut the meat in a triangle.
Mashed potatoes,
right, mountains and all sorts of shapes. Mount Rushmore over there, you can do different things. So you can't make shapes. So how you deal with the Gemara says that Ravuna would cut his meat into triangles on Yom Tov. So Orchot Shabbat says, he explains as follows: cutting food into a simple shape, as cutting food is an essential preparation for eating. What's forbidden is cutting it in a complex shape, where you're making an actual design, which is going to be part of kotev and of drawing. So intentionally making a hole of even a simple shape is forbidden, as this is purposely for the purpose of making a shape. Meaning, if I'm cutting and I'm cutting into some sort of simple shape, that's not a problem. Okay? I'm cutting and I'm cutting into different type of shapes, but simple shapes, I'm not working so hard, that's not a problem. But if I'm making a design on purpose, that's a problem. Or if I'm making a complex design, that's a problem. So that's your watermelon, right? You go to these fancy restaurants, they have the watermelon and the cantaloupe cut into swans and to other such things. So it has to be done before Shabbat. You can't do that on Shabbat. You cannot cut into decorative ways on Shabbat. Okay, you can't make those things. You can cut simple shapes. I take my watermelon and I cut little cubes. Not a problem. It's simple shapes. Okay, I can cut it in a triangle to get my little kid to eat it. All right, if you're making a triangle, she'll eat it more. Okay, so it's not a problem. The problem is to make complex, decorative, artistic designs in it. That would be the problem. That's the way the Chot Shabbat explains it. You take a look on source 67. One may cut a cake into pieces with simple shapes, such as a rectangle, triangle, even a rhombus. Okay, you can make a rhombus, they're all simple. One may not cut a cake into more complex shapes, such as flowers, such as animals, or the like. That you can do. One may cut vegetables or fruits into unique shapes, decorate the table. Okay, again, as long as they're simple. It would seem that one may remove circle-shaped pieces from a watermelon using a special spoon, known as carving. Does not pose any problem of forming a shape. You can use a scoop into the watermelon. It's not a problem. It's a simple shape, right? It's when you do the decorative, artistic design that it would be a problem. So the same idea when you're spreading the tuna, as long as you're just spreading it to make it look nice, a little decorative, little nice spin, that's fine. But if you're starting to put it in the shape of a fish, of a this, of a that, the mashed potato into some sort of design, that's going to be your problem. Okay, we have 2 minutes, so we'll just look at the machshava, that he brings here in the Tzurba on page 192. So we know that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar, they were hiding from the Romans for 12 years. Then they came out and they saw regular people just doing regular things, and they said, "Why they're wasting all this time for Torah study?" Right? And they started burning everything down. Right? They had the laser eyes. Right? They had laser eyes. Right? Before they even invented the superhero with the Superman with laser eyes. Already you have Shem Bar Yochai and his son. Then they come back a year later, right? And they see a guy running around with Bisamim Erev Shabbat. And he had two. He had 2 hadassim. So they asked him, "What do you have 2 hadassim for?" So he said, "What do you mean? It's Zachar and Shomer. There's Zachar and Shomer in the Sefer Debrot. It says it twice, Zachar and Shomer. So I have 1 hadas for Zachar, I have 1 for Shomer." So they said, "Wow, Chazek Kam Chaviv Mitzvah Yisrael. Look how special the mitzvah to Yisrael." Their minds were put to ease. So they calmed down and they stopped burning things down, right? So what was going on over here? So says Reb Kook, the minds were put at ease as they were no longer distressed about the eternal life being swallowed up by the temporary life. When they saw that even in the temporal life, Klal Yisrael has a strong connection to the eternal world. This connection revitalizes and gives strength to those who stumble and those who are weary and unable, and enables them to be energized for holy service, even in their old age. The elevation of holiness, of transforming the heavy nature of old age to the energy of youth, cannot possibly occur except through mundane activities. When they burst out of their space to be elevated to the realm of holy, like the relationship between the internal to the temporal world, the internal world raises the level of the temporal world. When they combine together, for this reason, they were put at ease. They saw how someone was able to take the Gashmiut and to turn it into Ruchniut, and they said, okay, the Gashmiut of this world has some reasoning. It has a point. They're able to go up. And so if people are busy with mundane things, but on Shabbat, they're able to go and take the mundane and make it spiritual. That in itself calmed Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Elazar to see that. So he writes here in the Tzurba, let us attempt to tap into the spiritual energy of Shabbat. Both those that accompany its positive elements and the negative elements, if we can allow them to revitalize our Shabbat experience and excitement in connecting with Hashem, we can enhance the rest of our lives with youthful energy and elevated holiness as well. So we should be zeicher to feel that energy every Shabbat. Take the gashmias, take your cake, take your cookies, take your drinks, your snacks, everything that you have, your sleep, and turn it into the service of Hashem, and let that revitalize you and give you that youthful energy. Okay, we have minyan. Okay. Shavua Tov Nikulam.
Thank you very
We'll see everyone next week.
much.